Hello and welcome to Double AI. The full banquet of sports is here. So too is the bitter taste of team-wide infection and shutdown. I'm Phil in Los Angeles. These are the data scientists and the AI evangelists. Hey, Ari. Hey, Andrew. Welcome, guys.
Hey,
Hey,
thanks.
Phil. Hey, Ari. Great to be here.
Yep. So the smorgasbord, the full smorgasbord of baseball, men's and women's basketball, men's and women's golf, and hockey. Hey, hockey's NHL's virus-free so far. But if we go into some of these things, let's just start a little bit with the NBA. The Greek Freak dropped 36 on back-to-back games. What a start. That guy's dangerous when rested. The AD and LeBron Lakers. And notice I got AD before LeBron right now. They clinched the West, top seed for the first time since 2010, when the Lakers won it all with the late Kobe Bryant. That's the appetizer. And you guys have been to a lot of awards dinners. That's the cocktail weenie wrapped in bacon, which is pretty good, by the way. But here's the main course. MLB week number 2. We hardly knew you. The Marlins are back in action at Baltimore after missing, and I have to go back and count these things up. They missed 7 games, 18 players infected. Fellas, they were not clubbing, I guarantee it. They were getting coffee, food, and clothes. Derek Jeter's such a trustworthy guy. That's what he said. I hope he's right. The Cardinals, 7 players infected, including Yadier Molina, 6 staffers also. They're missing 7 games, but they did not go to a casino. Although Jerry Hairston tweeted about that idea last night, and it got a lot. I think he said something like, "I'm hearing," which is his way of saying friends around the league said, "Oh yeah, those guys, the Marlins guys were out at clubs in Atlanta, and the Cardinals guys, they all went to a casino." All right. Now, the tough part of that, and here's the setup. So the Phillies sat out 7 games, no positive test. Andrew McCutchen, quoting, "I was upset that everything that's transpired, whoever decided to step out or not necessarily follow the health and safety protocol, I'm sitting here at home watching other teams play, and we have to watch this happen while we did nothing wrong." So for me, that was very upsetting. I'm going to start with Ari because of experience in a big league clubhouse. Andrew, this is what we don't get in sports very often, and that's truth. Ari, that's a veteran speaking truth into an industry.
Yeah, that's right. And being here in Chicago, David Ross, manager, said something similar that, the Cubs didn't get positive tests. So, can't, blame everybody or, at least now, so, it's a social stigma if you end up getting tested positive, since you're going to cancel 3, 6 or so games, if not more, if things don't get contained. So at least now the players are kind of castigating other players. So there's pressure not to do it. People are realizing, instead of getting the coffee in your room, to go out for coffee or pick up milk, I think was one of the other items. Be very careful. If you do get out, wear masks, do actual precautions. Don't go to casinos or other houses of repute or whatever they do or don't do. And then it's also other thoughts, the bubbles and other sports seem to be a bit more effective, since you're not getting on planes, you're not necessarily taking the unknown Ubers or taxis, things of that nature. So at least there's social stigma now, which hopefully will help.
Well, the Indians were a team that supposedly had one of those conversations very early on, but I believe what you're getting into is a lot of human nature. That's part of the challenge. Now, guys, that's a challenging thing. And if you go to MLB.com homepage, they have a great big thing on, here's the good news. It's like, don't look over here, look over here. I'm hiding this, let's look here. But there's plenty of good news. And Andrew, that leads us to your Twins off to a hard start in the American League. The Yankees, Judge and the Big G, over the next 2 months, hotter than Broadway and the Big Apple. In the National League, the Cubs and the Rockies, which was a team that we talked about that although Drive, our data robot intelligence value estimator, predicted, that was one team that we said, if they do a little better pitching, they may surprise. They're doing very well with pitching, but so are the Cubs. Now, Andrew, first off, let's talk about your Twins, because they're supposed to be good. We predicted they'd be good, and they're off to a really solid start along with a couple of teams in this first week.
Yeah, they've had a really great start to the season. I think pitching's probably been a little bit better than expected. Some of their pitching pickups have really helped them out. That lineup we knew could score runs, and it keeps scoring runs. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Donaldson went out, right, with some injuries. They've now had some injuries to their pitching staff. I think more broadly from looking at this opening couple weeks, right, we've seen some really good teams living here in San Diego. San Diego's been off to a hot start as well, doing, I think, about as well as they had hoped, but maybe better than most people expected. But on the other hand, we have seen a fair number of pitchers injured early on, problems with back, arm, etc. So we'll see how that continues as well, if they're just not ready for the start of the season.
Well, we'll get into that. Now, you know, your Padres are on the verge of calling up a couple of lightning minor league arms that are on their taxi squad, and I've started to hear some rumbling about that. That means the Padres are looking at, hey, we're pretty good. Let's go get those guys, and we'll nurse them along out of the bullpen. The injuries you talked about, Atlanta loses Mike Soroka, Achilles terrible. Angels having problems with Shohei Ohtani, out for at least a month with a forearm strain. And Ari, that's been a consistent thing we've been hearing about some of the regular starting pitchers.
Yeah, and oh my God, the Achilles tendon, you could see it snap, even though he was wearing socks and pant legs. That's how serious it was. Doesn't look like he came off the mound any hard. But yeah, whatever the actual cause is, having reduced spring training may or may not be some of the end results of extra injuries to some of these players.
I think that's fair to say, may or may not. We really don't know. And then the opposite is true. One of the pleasant surprises, through 10 games, the Cubs starting pitchers have held hitters to a 156 average. That's the lowest allowed by any team starting pitchers through 10 games a full century. This is 2020. That dates back to 1920. That's amazing, guys.
Yeah, and that really doesn't have anything to do with a shortened season, in that that could happen at the beginning of the season. So to think of all of the great pitching staffs through the years, Orioles, Mets from the 60s, 70s, that's incredible.
Well, and guys, all right, we talked about Andrew's Twins. We're going to talk about the O's a little bit, because I think the two things, we'll go one individual. The biggest individual surprise of the season so far is Cespedes splitting from the Mets and the whole thing. I mean, that everybody looked bad. No one looked good. That was really amazing. I think he had struck out 11 of 22 or 23 at bats. Things were really not going well, and that just was poorly handled all the way around. Cespedes and his agent and everything, that was bad. Bad surprise. You just don't expect that. Good surprise, the Orioles swept the Rays. And when they started that series, the Rays were talking already playoffs, World Series. That was a surprise.
Yeah, and since I used to work for the Orioles, maybe I can add some thoughts. It was for the listeners, I was assistant to Dan Duquette and helped out with almost all of the signings and some of the draft and trades. So last year they had a lot of great impact players. John Means, Jonathan Villar, Trey Mancini, Hanser Alberto, Andrew Kashner, Dylan Bundy. These are names not everyone knows of, but we're all impact players. They have lost a lot of them, but they still have some good players. Santander, Severino, catcher Mika Givens, and then others have stepped up. Austin Hayes. So they're an exciting team and could do, some some surprises.
We'll see. That's the beauty of this thing, right? One full week down. As soon as we played 7 games, and I promised you guys 21 games that sharing some coach observations. So, but you know what, Andrew, you at the beginning of the season, you said we may not last an entire season, and I still like what you're thinking. That has a chance. And then Ari, you said one day at a time, right to the end, and that might, guys, we're right where we started after 1 week.
Well, wasn't it Keith Olbermann who reported over the weekend that Major League Baseball had reached out to the networks to tell them, be ready because we may not be playing by the end of this week, right? When baseball itself is saying this to its TV partners. And I would like to say, I'm not going to say where the Marlins went in Atlanta or where anyone else went. I would be surprised even if people are taking this seriously because they are living at home with their families. They have to trust their families are behaving as well. Anyone else they're letting into their house. And we have a number of states with Major League Baseball teams that are having real problems right now with uncontrolled growth of the virus. And so I really feel for McCutchen. I think he's absolutely right. Their season got much harder than it needed to be. But I think you're also going to see this pop up even if people are very careful.
Well, we're going to discuss that throughout this. So let's turn the page to football because there's plenty here to discuss. The Raiders announcing that no fans at their games, brand new stadium, 65,000 seats, downtown Las Vegas, first year in Vegas. So now the Raiders, Jets, and Giants, no fans. Andrew, the gaming industry, this is big news for them because they've got to turn and reset now, and they've got some new factors they're going to have to adjust to on a regular basis. Try and explain that to our listeners, please.
Well, I think there's a couple of things going on here. First, it's Vegas itself that is saying this, which has to call into question just the attendance in Vegas for games. I know the Vegas hotels were hoping that the Raiders would be a big draw on the weekends, which is definitely just going to hurt them. But I think the more interesting piece here is how do players perform in empty stadiums? And how does that affect the way we set our lines, the way we bet, the activity of the betting audience? And, is it even going to be worse if in the NFL we don't do it in a uniform fashion like it looks like right now? If I have to go from playing the Raiders in Las Vegas with no one in the stands to going to maybe Dallas and playing in front of some fans, how do I even begin to take that into account as a bettor, especially because I can't sit here and say, hey, playing in an empty stand makes the players better or worse. It looks like some players love this empty stand and other players really hate it. So it'll be really interesting, but it's a real challenge for the sports betting community.
One of the things, guys, I liked out of the NBA bubble is one of the coaches said he liked that this is what he called pure basketball. The teams that are prepared are playing at a high level, and, the Freak drops 36 back-to-back. He's clearly rested and prepared. All right, more football. Rutgers quarantines an entire team all week, coaches too, after 15 players showed up with the virus, and now 28 have tested positive. A campus party appears to be the source of the spread. Can't do that. Texas, high school football. Texas and 36 states have started high school football this week. California and 5 others will shift from the fall to spring for high school football. 7 others still waiting to make a decision. And Ari's in Chicago, the Northwestern guys, they shut down the program for just a little bit. Now from football to football, Bundesliga is meeting to set rules for fans to return. So we'll learn more about that. Now, Andrew, what's that an indication of potentially good?
Well, I think it's a great sign. We have to give the Germans credit, right? They took this very seriously from the beginning. They did have one of the earlier outbreaks in Europe. They got it under control. They've kept it stabilized. They're being able to begin to go back to normal. that's really great that it is possible to go back to something at least resembling normal, but they did a lot of work to get there. And so I think it's good in that it's possible to do, but at the same time, it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of people taking this seriously and allowing us to get the virus under control.
Okay. You know, guys, this part of the show, we have quick hitting stories, some of my favorite stories of the week. And in the middle of all the madness of what's going on, there are really some good stories. Now, Rafi Nadal just announced today he's not going to play in the U.S. Open, the Tennis Open later this month. He just simply says he's choosing not to travel, which is probably a wise choice at this time. Remember, he won last year in a near 5-hour marathon. He's the defending men's champ. Okay, I like this story. Pittsburgh Pirates are fetching foul balls and sending them to the season ticket holder for the seat where the ball lands. That's creative. That's really kind. That's the human touch we like about baseball. All right, Indy 500, you talk about spread. The Hoosier State, middle of the Midwest. It's spiking there. One of Ari's neighbors in Indiana. The virus is spiking there. Indy 500 owner Roger Penske changed his mind. No fans now. The race scheduled for August 23rd, the greatest spectacle in racing, was looking at somewhere around 75 to 80,000 fans, but they've shut it down. Roger, a well-regarded businessman and sportsman, said, quote, "The toughest business decision I've made in my life." That says a lot from a gentleman like him, and you guys know I have a lot of regard for him and his organization. All right, last story. Best story of the week, Mr. Bubble. Did you guys catch this, or is this new to you? Did you see the artwork on Twitter? Okay. All right. Indiana Pacer T.J. Warren scored a career-high 53 and then followed it up with 34. Someone, a reporter or some newspaper guy sitting at the thing just said, kind of slapped his forehead and said, "Mr. Bubble." It took off. He is he is Mr. Bubble for excelling in the NBA virus bubble in Orlando. Mr. Bubble, we salute you. Do you guys remember the commercials at all? They're on, you can go to YouTube and find them. In fact, one of their lines is, "Have a tub of fun with Mr. Bubble." And if you really love trivia, the voice of Mr. Bubble in the early commercials is the same guy that does Tony the Tiger, the original Tony the Tiger. Yeah, it is. His name is Thurl Ravenscroft. And Thurl did a voice in nearly every ride of the original Disneyland and Disney World. You can see that. If you go through the Magic Castle, he's one of the 4 dead guys that comes to life in the graveyard. So there you go, Thurl Ravenscroft. Now we bring that up because Ari's kids, they're in the business, so, and I've worked in the business, so there we go.
And on a related note of the word Mr., my wife worked with Mr. Whipple, who did "Don't Squeeze the Charmin."
Oh, wow.
Brought him in retirement for a couple more commercials and ads, which was a lot of fun.
Oh, well, guys, that'll about wrap it up for this week. That's a lot. This is fun. Never a bad week when we're together, guys. The banquet of sports is here. Probably more of the same, up and down, right? From now until we get to somewhere around Thanksgiving, more up and down. Be safe. Be good humans to each other out there. Wear a mask. Be safe. It's real. I read another one, I think, from an LSU football player who just said in his Instagram, "It's real." And he's real sick right now. It is real. Be safe. Be kind to each other. Well, that's it for this week. This is Double AI, the podcast about analytics and sports. For my partners, Andrew and Ari, I'm Phil. We'll see you again next week.